that point, maybe I see it's 11 o'clock, commissioners, unless my watch is not telling the truth.
I would suggest that maybe let's adjourn at 11:15. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You may proceed, Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mpacha. Now, I'd just like to try and explain what happens when you undertake an exercise like this, Commissioners. You ask the mathematicians, who are the modelers, to synthesize a set of circumstances, and frequently you ask what the worst possible risks are. And in this discussion, you run from exchange rate risks to affordability risks to inflation risks, all kinds of risks, and you ask them what the worst possible things are that can happen. It's a very important exercise, because once we understand what the risks are, then in the context of management, we know how to circumvent those kinds of risks. And so if you read the affordability report and didn't understand that it meant to provide some risk appraisal, you might actually become very scared about everything. But the same thing happens in life. If you had to read a gravity report, none of us would ever fly in an aeroplane. It's the same here. We ask experts to use the mathematics that they know to help us understand what the risks are, because the task of management is not to avoid taking decisions, but to avoid unnecessary risk in the circumstances. And that essentially is what paragraph 57 sets out here, some of the risks that we'd ask the affordability exercise of modelers to do for us. Now, we then use these scenarios to help us understand these issues. And there's a very important set of issues that I'd like to draw attention to, Commissioners. And it arises from some of what Mr. Donaldson had submitted to the Commission, and I'd like to crave your indulgence to read from his paginated page 38 at paragraph 78. It's an important point, which is why I digress to deal with the matter. He says, in considering the affordability and appropriateness of...
Just hold on, Mr. Manuel.
I'm sorry, sir.
We're still trying to get that paragraph.
Thank you, sir. He says, and it's Donaldson, paragraph 78 on page 38, he says, in considering the affordability and appropriateness of government's expenditure on the SDPP, it is instructive to compare this expenditure with annual outlays on other social and developmental or development priorities. In the year 2002-2003, SDPP expenditure was at its peak and amounted to 6.342 billion rand. In this year, consolidated government expenditure included the following amounts as reflected in the 2003 budget review, which of course is the report to Parliament. On education, 62.76 billion rand. On health services, 34.94 billion rand. On social security and welfare services, 41.966 billion rand. On housing and community development, 13.68 billion rand. On transport and communications, 13.825 billion rand. On police services, 20.53 billion rand. He goes on to say, as is readily apparent from the annual budget review and other budget documents published by the National Treasury, there's been strong growth in both nominal and real terms in expenditure on education, health and social security and welfare, housing, transport and other social and development priorities during the years of expenditure on the SDPP. In fact,